Welcome to another episode of Monday Night Muscle. I'm joined by our California Pro Champion by way of Texas, Big Patrick Moore. Welcome to the show, Pat.
Oh, it's good to be here.
Welcome to the desert where it's nice and hot.
It's a lot hotter than Texas.
Well, it's been a minute, man. You're in the victory circle now. You win the California Pro Championships, which we talked about earlier, automatic qualification for the Mr. Olympia competition, which is always the $1 million question. As soon as you win one, what's next? I mean, have you had an opportunity to kind of like digest the fact that you won that competition coming off of a show that you thought you were going to do better in 2020?
Yeah, I'm still processing.
Yeah.
So it's funny about this show is this was a 42-day prep.
Yeah.
After 2020 was so crazy. 2019 was a great year, obviously, for me.
Right.
We had the California Pro in May. Then Olympia was a great showing. I started prep initially for that year in February. And so once the Olympia was over and I was all ecstatic about that, no matter the placing, and that was all the rumblings like, oh, you could have been higher, you could have, yeah, but I'm like, no, it was the experience. I mean, it's nothing like your first time on that stage. And
What did you get the first time on that
10th.
stage? And so obviously people had higher expectations. So some people were disappointed, but you weren't. It was just another milestone for you.
Yeah,
to get there.
Because for me, I'm still learning a lot about the sport, about my body. So turning pro in 17,
right,
and on the stage in 19, it's like some guys that have been pro much longer have never even touched that stage.
Big jump.
Yeah, I was happy just to be there. Although I train intensely for it like any other competition, those guys that are on the stage have done this a lot longer than me. And like any sport, I wanted to measure up and see, okay, where am I at when you're going against the best guys in the world? They've done it, they're veterans. And it was an experience like no other. So I didn't have expectations.
Did you feel the pressure afterwards? Because some people had higher expectations, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you felt the weight of the accomplishment of being there. Other people were waiting for you to arrive and like win and be in the top 5. So where did you feel the nuance? Was it on social media? Did people go, what did you do, man? What happened? You're too smooth or what?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. It's always social media drives everything.
Right.
So you go on there and that's where you get built up or tore down.
True.
So it's just what you feed into.
Yeah.
And I just kind of listened to the positive.
Okay.
Like, I looked great. I was conditioned. I did everything I was supposed to do.
Right.
The judging and what happens, that's just a byproduct. I mean, you're going up against guys with different physiques.
Right.
On that particular stage, I was just so different than a lot of the guys. I didn't know how it would be compared. I didn't know if it would be top 5, second 5, third call outs, whatever. So after the show was over, of course, everyone has higher expectations, and now no longer being judged on what I brought to that stage.
Right.
Everyone seemed to kind of look as what I was going to be in the future. Then they lose sight of bodybuilding actually takes time. So there was the next Ronnie Coleman, he needs to do this. And, like you said, that's what I have to do is blow up and get bigger. Because more size, that's going to always be something that we strive for.
Sure.
And for me in particular, that's the narrative because I turned pro at just 1 pound over the limit for super heavyweights.
Right. So what was that weight?
I believe I was 223.
223. And how tall are you?
5'10".
Right. So you're in that Ronnie Coleman range. At 5'10", you're right there with Lee Haney. So the expectation is if they did it, you're going to have to do that as well. But I don't remember Ronnie when he was 220 something, except maybe his first Olympia in 92.
Yeah.
And so that's where it started for him, and he was dead last, by the way.
And that's the thing. That was a motivation to do, because after California, I actually was not going to do the Olympia because I was like, wow, this is my first pro win. Should I go to the next level? Because my original thinking was I wanted to do the Arnold Classic first. Not that it's a lower level of competition, but the Olympia being the most prestigious and the Arnold right under it, I just figured that was the stepping stone.
Which is coming in September.
Yeah.
So is that coming too soon?
I don't think that's too soon. Well, I did it in 2020.
Yeah.
And it was, kind of crazy there. But this time, I had no plans on doing it. So I don't know if that will change, if I may receive an invite. I know the list came out recently. I'm not opposed to doing it, but I do want to take the time to make sure I can peak as best I can for the Olympia.
I doubt they would turn you away if you decided to go in there. You're the reigning California champion. The question is, would it benefit your run to the Olympia to be better? Because that's what you want. You want to be better than last time.
Yeah.
Would the Arnold Classic interfere with that? Because you got to peak in September.
Yeah.
Then you got to peak again in October. I think you're going to have to choose which side of the fence you want to be on. You were 10th, and now I'm assuming you're trying to get up higher.
Yeah.
The best of the best. I imagine the Arnold might kind of interfere with that, unless you really want the Arnold Classic title more than the Olympia title.
Yeah, it's gonna be a choice. I'm gonna have to choose one because then Olympia is a 2-day show.
Right.
So now I'm having to peak for 2 days, and I have to learn. Last time I had to do that was in 2019,
right.
and I don't feel like I fully peaked at that show.
Okay.
It's crazy because after I went back and listened to the commentary, I think you were the only one that actually picked up on that. And
of course I'm the only one. Listen, when you listen to me, you learn, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, you might not like what you hear, but you're going to learn. But go ahead, I'm listening.
And everything that you said was, you're like, I have the width on the back, but I'm missing the thickness. Right. I have the pecs, but the fullness just isn't there. I wasn't full at that show.
But wait, we need to play the clip and hear the audio of what a real professional commentator sounds like when they know what the hell they're looking at.
Yeah, and it's funny because even after that, I would go on these tears with the people on social media, and I would tell, I don't have to listen to what you say. Right. And they took it the wrong way. The way I wanted to bring that information across was, hey, I'm getting advice from guys who have done it.
Right.
So if I'm going to listen to any advice, it's going to be these guys whose shoes I'm trying to fill, versus a lot of people who haven't even been in this sport at all.
Well, speaking about shoes to fill, I mean, you're coming out of a state that's just spit out people. Mm-hmm. I mean, Texas had Branch Warren, Steve Kuklo, Johnny Jackson, Ronnie Coleman. Yeah. Who else? Am I missing anybody?
Oh, yeah, Lee Labrada.
The Hall of Famer, Hunter, the Offspring. I mean, Texas is ripe with champions. And so where are you getting your motivation, and how did you even get it started?
So I come from playing basketball and boxing. Okay. So a team sport and a solo sport. Once I stopped with those, I was still in the gym, still working out, and it's just classic. Like a lot of guys start the same way. I was training. I ran into a guy who said, "Hey, man, people would say I should compete." Yeah. At the time, I didn't know what that was.
So a lot of guys that other people see the talent before we see it ourselves.
And I didn't know anything about it, so I'm like, no, I'm not getting on stage in underwear. I just didn't know what the sport entailed.
Right.
Well, after a little bit of pushing, he just told me, look, just do the show, see how you like it. He told me his exact words was, you could be great, you don't know what you have. That's my buddy Gabe Salas that lives down in Texas.
Yeah, those people are important to have. It's always that hype guy that sees something we don't see in ourselves.
And it's crazy, man, because he competed, and then he had some health issues. He had kidney replacement. So, of course, he is kind of out of the competition scene, but he's always been there. Right. And he's still in the background. He's like, well, you know what, I can live vicariously through you.
Right.
Because I saw you, and I noticed you before anybody.
Right. Yeah.
And he was the one that pointed out Phil Heath around that time. Yeah. And I saw Phil, and I didn't know anything about who he was.
Mind you, Phil was a basketball player.
Yeah. And so I drew that similar. It was like, okay, well, we have similar things in common.
Okay.
So I saw that he liked the same kind of shoes, and his training was something that I could do because his training wasn't crazy. Right. It was something I could understand and translate to my own use. And so coming into bodybuilding, that's what I was always looking at. I would see your videos, Flex Wheeler. I would look at Ronnie and Dorian Yates, and I'm like, Jesus
Those
Christ.
are crazy videos.
Yeah. And so then you kind of know your lane. And it's like, I can kind of relate to these guys over here. So I'm just going to kind of slide in here. Right. And that physique right there is what I'm going to shoot for.
Okay.
And once I knew what I wanted to look like, the motivation just came from wanting to be the best in the world because I saw Phil at the 2014 Phil Heath Classic.
Wow, you saw him at 2014, he was almost done. I mean,
and it was surreal seeing him because I had never seen a human being that big in person. I hadn't been around bodybuilding. I was around basketball players and boxers. So I saw him, and I remember telling him backstage, I want to have what you have. Right. I want to have that respect from the audience or the fans of the sport, and then the only thing that was between that was the work that had to be done. Yeah,
the work is the hardest part and the consistency, but it seems like the invitation is very similar. We get addicted to, I want to look like that, right? Yeah. You found something that was similar to what you like, and then you had to go figure out how to get there.
Yeah, and I was a kid, I'll never forget, my mom would go to the grocery store and she would shop and do everything she had to do, and me and my brother would go to the magazine aisle. He would look at video games and I would just look at random magazines, whatever was around. I would see the bodybuilding magazines then. Mind you, this was the 90s.
Right.
So you guys were all on the cover, and I'm like 10. Right. So I'm looking, veins are popping out and guys are just looking crazy, and my young mind, that's unreal. How do you even come across looking like that? Right. And those images always burn in the back of my mind.
Who was the first big guy that you ran into that was from the magazines? In person.
In person, probably Ronnie.
So you saw Ronnie Coleman in person, breathing and walking, and
wait, and this was after he was retired. Okay. I hadn't seen. I hadn't seen. No, I didn't see anyone in prime. There was this guy named Big Al back in Houston. and he may catch this interview, I'm not sure, but I remember seeing him in LA Fitness in 2007. This guy was huge. Yeah. He was a pro guy. I think he had a neck injury, so he didn't go very far.
Okay.
Same exact accent as Ronnie. I mean, just big country guy. And everything he said, it just always sounded like Ronnie. And he, oh, Patrick, you know, he would tell me and he would talk to me and he would try to guide me. Right. But at that time, it's 2007. Right. Bodybuilding was not even a thought. Then I was still boxing. Okay. And so he was the first big person. He was like 300 pounds. And I saw him in the locker room and I was like, that's a big guy. And I would see him more often, and finally I asked him, like, hey, what do you do? And he told me it was bodybuilding, and he broke it down, and I was like, yeah, I could. At that time, I'm like 190 pounds, 200 pounds, so I'm looking at this guy like I could never do that.
So where'd you place in your first show?
So I had a Phil Heath, so I won the overall in that show.
You won your very first contest?
No, so the first contest, I had the novice, that was at the Europa.
Okay.
And so that was second. So the competitive spirit in me was like,
I gotta get there.
I was right there.
Okay.
And so I went immediately into the open class. That's before they had the separation of novice and true novice and all that.
Right.
So then the next show I got second again at the Texas State.
Okay.
And that was to a guy that turned pro, Lorenzo Jones maybe. I don't want to mess his last name up, but he was an older guy, and he was super conditioned, but I got second to him in the light heavyweight category. Okay. And so after that, that was my attempt at nationals, where I got like 18th.
All right, we'll stop right there, because I want to find out when you finally win right after this commercial break here at Monday Night Muscle.
You diet down, train hard, and supplement smart for months. When the time comes to step on stage, don't leave your tan to chance. Go with the pros. Pro Tan. #1 worldwide since 1987 and the official sponsor of the Olympia for the last 15 years. Don't step on stage without it. Pro Tan.
All right, we're on with the California Pro Champion, Patrick Moore by way of Texas, and we're getting to the first victory in your bodybuilding career, which was what year?
2014.
2014, 7 years ago, and what show was that?
That was the Phil Heath Classic.
The Phil Heath Classic, and was that the first year he had it?
That was the second year.
Okay.
So the first year had a great turnout. I didn't actually make that show.
I emceed that one.
Okay.
Thanks, Phil.
And it was a lot of people, but we in 2014 we had
1,100, I think.
Yes,
it doubled.
It was crazy, and after that show, we didn't leave till like 1 a.m., but it was such a surreal feeling because at that time I interviewed with Jay Cutler and Phil.
Yes, you got to be in heaven right here. These guys are the magazines.
Yeah, and they at the time, I remember Jay Cutler asked me, he was like, who's your favorite bodybuilder? He really put me on the spot.
Phil was right there?
Phil was right there.
So it's almost like meeting a nice hot chick for the first time, asking for a phone number.
Yeah. And
Phil's standing there, and you tell him it was him.
And that's why, I told him, I was like, yeah, I kind of got to. But Jay Cutler, when I saw him train, it was the same deal. He was so big. Right. My mind then was like, it's going to take a long time to get there. But like I said, I related a little bit more to Phil because it's still the same stigma of basketball. We have a similar background.
Right, in the style.
Yeah. So after that show, I was supremely confident. And I did no cardio for that show. Okay. I was eating pizza.
Still learning.
Yeah, 2 weeks out, I was eating pizza.
Yeah, Ronnie Coleman used to deliver pizzas, by the way.
If I would have had that job, I think it would have benefited me a little bit.
You might not have been a bodybuilder, but go ahead.
And so I went to have a shot at nationals after that, and that was at the USA. And oh man, I think I got 18, 19. I was so far down
Humble
the line.
pie.
Yeah, big time.
Okay.
And it was so funny.
Now it's time to go to work.
Yeah, it was time to go to work. And I remember having that mindset, like some of the amateur guys I see now that win the show and they're like, pro card, I'm gonna get my pro card. Right. And granted, it's a lot easier to get it now than it was when you guys were competing. Yeah. And everyone can agree with that. And so, but the competition was still good at that time. Right. So I placed like dead last, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. These guys are much more than what I just went against. These guys were conditioned. I remember seeing guys with veins, vascular everywhere.
Yeah, and I think on that level, you see things that you've never seen before. Yeah, when you come from the amateur level into the national level. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a big jump.
You get in there and it's like, okay, these guys you learn what condition. I had no idea what conditioning was. Right. I didn't do cardio for the show. I was like,
did you have a coach?
No, didn't have a coach.
So you're just doing it on your own?
Just doing it on my own. Okay. Yep. Got up there and being called out in that last little 3 or 4 guys was
humbling.
Yeah, and I was like, I never want to feel like that again.
Yeah, I think that's where people flip a switch. Either you go the other way and get the hell out, or you turn it up and you're like, I'm never going to be here again.
Exactly. And I don't mind starting out like that because having an auspicious start, kind of made it to where if I did have any failures in the future, okay, I'm just not the best I'm going to be.
Right.
I can be better than this, and this is why I didn't place like this.
It's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress. And once I adopted that mentality, it made placing lower in any shows like, okay, whatever, I've been here before.
So how long until you, where and when did you get your pro card?
So then I came back in the USA's in 2017, and we actually interviewed after that show.
Yes.
And that's when I turned pro. And I remember you saying then, if I can learn to get the condition right and fill out, I could be a problem for the bigger guys.
You see that? I'm giving out free advice.
It was free game.
They got to appreciate me.
It was free game. But those words stick with me because hearing fans build you up and say, it's always appreciated. I love the fans. Bodybuilding fans, there's nothing like it. A lot of them are fanatics.
Sure.
And they will ride for you like just nobody's business.
Yeah.
But when you hear it from guys who have done it and that you've seen and you're like, okay, they obviously see something. So it makes you get in that mindset like I can really do this.
But I imagine you heard throughout your career Ronnie Coleman's name more than your fair share because you're 5'10".
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people that can do what Ronnie Coleman did, nor do they want to do what Ronnie did because the end result could be the same.
Yeah.
In terms of beating your body up and tearing it down. And you seem like much more of an artist more than a hardcore blue collar heavy lifter. I'm sure you're strong, but if Phil Heath is a guy that you kind of like, you're probably paying attention to every exercise you're doing and with purpose.
Yeah, I've had my 400 plus bench days, 500 pound squat days, all that stuff. As a youngster, it's just strength.
Yeah, you're not even thinking about the weight.
Exactly. So I didn't quite know how to translate that weight to building muscle.
Right.
It was more so just moving the weight without purpose.
Right.
So once I got away from that and I started to do more studying and I would look, and that's when YouTube started to get more popular.
Right.
Instagram came along, all the social media. So I was starting getting all this information. And that's when I saw the old school guys, the golden era.
Right.
So I would Google that, right, and YouTube and watch the videos. And I'm like, damn, all these guys, these top 10 guys all look like they could be Miss Olympia. But I remember the chiseled waist, the physiques were so different.
Yeah.
There were various builds, right? And I love that because, now it seems like a lot of people have lost sight of that. Hey, we all start different. No one of us are the same. Yes, the open class, but we're all built different.
Right.
Everyone has different strengths, different weaknesses. So I had to identify with the guys that were built like me. So being 5'10", I couldn't identify with the new Ronnie.
Right.
That was like, wow, he didn't even get that until later in life.
Yeah, it was much later.
Yeah, but when the guys that I saw like you that were close to my age at that time, 24, 25, 26, that's art.
Right.
I want to get up on that stage and where people, regardless of the end result, if it's going to bring me a first place or an Olympia title or whatever, I still created a work of art. And when I'm 80 and I go back and I look at these photos, I'm like, man, you did something spectacular there.
Yeah.
And I'm taking my time with my body because
you appreciate it.
I can't let the sport, I want to be able to be functional after the sport.
And that's a huge thing not to gloss over.
Yeah.
Because in the moment, in the training, you're just solely focused on trying to beat this image of what you think the judges want. They want you bigger, they want you stronger, and you can get hurt.
Yeah.
And one injury can ruin the whole thing. And trust me, I'm gonna drop some names. Rich Gaspari, Barry DeMay, my mentor, John Brown, Kevin Levrone, Flex Wheeler. They've all experienced some sort of injury that changed the course of what they had in mind for their physique because of training.
Yeah.
The question is, who are you looking for towards inspiration when you're in the gym? Are you doing this by yourself? Because that's a very rare thing that happens where a bodybuilder goes in there and can train with just anybody. Most of the time they have coaches these days.
Yeah, so this was still by myself at the time, all the way until I turned pro.
Okay.
I had no one telling me like, hey, you need to do this. My buddy Gabe was there, but he can only take me as far as he could.
Sure.
And he was tremendous at training. But even now he'll tells me, man, you've passed me up, dude.
Yeah.
I can't keep up because you're just turned into something else now. And he grew me as far as he could, and so then I had to take it and translate, like I said, what you guys did, the whole stimulate, don't annihilate. This has kept me injury-free. And that's why I said I don't want the sport to wear me out, because some guys will just train. They'll get an injury, I'll train through it.
Keep going.
Elbows, knees, hips, I'll train through it. For me, I listen to my body I start with the weight that I know I can communicate my mind with the muscle,
right,
and then I increase it from there.
Yeah.
So this way I know if I'm ever in a danger zone and something doesn't feel right, I can either change the exercise or get away from it completely. There's certain exercises I cannot do. Underhand barbell kills my elbows because of my structure. I won't ever try to do them because what happens with 225 and I injure something, I pull or tear.
Being aware of your body is very important. You could build your body numerous ways.
Yeah.
You don't have to fit into some mold and do a certain exercise because John Doe's doing it. You got to find out what works for you. But let's start with the freshest memory. You're fresh off of winning the California Pro.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that wasn't on the calendar. You did it like 42 days contest. Who gets ready for a pro show in 42 days?
Yeah.
What happened?
So I was out. I went to Flex Lewis gym, and I was training. My body had held a weight of 260 for, it had been 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. Probably 3-4 months, right? And I hadn't checked my weight. And I remember telling my buddy, he asked me how much do I weigh, and I was like, I don't know, maybe 240 something, 250, and I stepped on the scale and it was 260.
Okay.
And so then from there, I would weigh myself every few weeks, and it was always 260, 261, 259, 262. It was floating, and I was eating 4 or 5 times a day because I had no plans to compete until later in the year.
Training, right?
Yeah, and I just kind of was letting my body feed because 2020 I had a rough year. My body needed to recover.
Right.
And all the dieting, all the cardio. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to kind of alter the food to my training. So as I build back up into intense training, I'll start to feed my body more and more. Well, anyway, fast forward, and I was out there for Yamamoto Nutrition visiting Flex's gym, and Jay Cutler was there, and he was like, man, how much do you weigh? And I told him, and he said, you're doing the California? And I was like, no, I haven't heard anything about it. For some reason, I wasn't getting the notification.
And this is in May, the middle of May somewhere.
This was in April.
April, okay.
And so I actually had a guest posing that was the middle of April.
Yeah.
Right after I saw him.
Yeah.
And he said, man, you should do California, like that's your show. And so I said, I'm just going to get back home and I'm going to train. I'm just going to do the show. I'm not going to say anything.
42 days, you just dialed it in?
It was 6 weeks. And I said, you know what? Here we go.
Yeah.
And just, it was 0 to 100. Flip the switch. I got back home, fasted cardio, started putting a meal plan together, started, to mess with certain things, see how my body responded.
So what did you drop down to? You started at 260, 263. What did you come down to?
Yeah, so funny story about that, right? So Phil was at the show. He helped me with that show, helped peak me.
Okay.
And I told
which is kind of surreal. Phil interviews you after you win his show in 2014 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And now here you are like buddies training in the gym and talking to each other.
It's crazy to get that knowledge. Because I could only learn so much from you guys from a distance.
Watching.
Right. I'd hear your interviews, Flex Wheeler. I'd hear all the guys, and I'm like,
talking to other people about other things.
And I'm like, man, their mentality is, I'm in line with their mentality, but to actually go and share that mental space with somebody in person was much different.
And here's Phil, right?
Here's Phil, and he's like, hey, this, that. He's giving me all of the tools.
Right.
Like that's how I ended up working with Chris Aceto, but we'll go back to that. Phil's not the type of guy that says, oh, Patrick, you look great. Oh, you small waist. Oh, you'll be. No, he's like, you need this, you need that. This isn't great. You need to work on that.
Okay.
And he's just being a real coach. Even though he's not coaching me, he's just telling me like a big brother would tell his little brother, like, hey, I know I want you to do well, and I know you want to do well. So these are the things you need to work on. So I remember telling him, oh, I was 236 at the Olympia, at 5'10". I'm at 2019. I know I'm going to be 243, 244, right? He gets in on Thursday, and he takes a look, and he's like, okay. And he's sitting on the couch, and he says, and you're probably going to be 234, 235. And I'm like, BS, man. Like,
you expect to be heavier?
Yeah,
okay.
two years later, and 2 years later, I'm bigger.
Right.
I'm looking at the pictures. I'm looking at the training. I'm very, bigger all the way around.
Right.
And you had to be at the show to even see it.
Sure.
And I'm telling him, dude, you're crazy. Like, no, man, that's not. I'm going to be 240 something, right? At least 4 or 5 pounds. He posed me for about 30 minutes. I lost 6 pounds, just like that. And he said, okay. And he said, go ahead and rest. And we did that. And we posed. And the next thing you know, Sean, Friday night, he was like, well, how much you weighing now? I stepped on the scale, it was 235.
Yeah, that's what won Rami the Mr. Olympia title, was his posing.
Yeah.
I was sitting with Rich Gaspari, and we're like, he's the first one in the pose, he's the last one out of the pose.
Yeah.
Then we find out that Dennis James, he worked with Dennis on the posing, the lost art of mandatory practice posing. So many bodybuilders leave it to the end and it's too late.
Yeah.
So all that posing got you in the condition that you needed to be in to win.
And it was tough. I mean, he would come up to the room, he'd do it. He's like, I'm gonna be back in a couple hours, I'll check on you.
Yeah.
And he said, come on. And I was over here in this light. He'd get over here in this light, get over here in that light.
Yeah, and you're lightheaded.
And I'm like, geez, man.
If it wasn't his voice telling you to do it, you probably wouldn't have done it.
I would have done it. Yeah. I'm like, I haven't had water. I'm thirsty, man. And he's telling me, and I'm sighing, I'm huffing. I'm like,
so think of this. So if he wasn't there, that stuff would not have happened for you in that contest prep.
Absolutely not.
And it probably wouldn't have ended the way it ended for you.
Yeah.
So this is the part where the bodybuilder's on his own. You're on the 11th hour.
Yeah.
And the work is not done. You thought you did the work prior to arriving at the show.
Yeah.
Phil comes in a day or two before the show, and this is where the work really begins.
Yeah. And I was shocked when the final weight before we went on stage was 233.
Yeah.
So I was actually negative 3 pounds down from 2019.
Right.
Everything
you squeezed
was
out a lot of water.
A lot of water. And he told me, he said, keep in mind when I won Olympia, I was 232.
Yeah.
And it was, to
conceptualize that, Phil looks like he's about 700 pounds on stage.
we don't think about it. And then it makes me think about back then, being 230 on the stage in 90s was a good weight.
Absolutely. You realize that Arnold, I think, was 229 on the Olympia stage. And I remember when I ran into Lee Haney. Lee Haney was like 220 some odd pounds. He didn't wind up that way because he had an 8-year run. I think his top, he peaked out like 243. Yeah. But he's 5'10". Yeah. Now, 243 on you would be a nice solid weight, right? You're at 233. You could have another 5 years before you even hit that number. Yeah. But when you hit it, for your height, it's all relative.
And that's the thing I try to translate to the fans and all the supporters. I love them to death because they're always, but oh man, 20 pounds, this. I tell them, no matter what the weight says, the scale, because seeing that 233 changed the perspective for me a whole lot.
And this is just in May.
And this is just in May, yeah. Right. And so I said, you know what? I just have to let my body do what it's going to do. Because I remember Friday night, and he looked at me for the last time. He took me down to the hotel gym. And he said, come down here. We had been posing. Yeah. And I'm thinking, okay, cool. Finally, I can lay down and relax. And he's like, you know what? Get your stuff. Come on. And he takes me down to the gym. You strip down. Like, come on. Time to do it again. And I'm like,
this is what champions do. You got iron sharpens iron.
And that's what he told me. He said, this is championship rounds. And he was like, tough it up.
Because the other guys aren't doing it.
Yeah. And it made such a big difference. So when we were done and I got up the next morning and I looked at my physique, I can say that this was the first time I was confident going on stage.
You did the work.
I did the work, and I had the striations in my outer sweep, things I had never seen before.
So for most people, that victory and that experience would be like, I got to do this at the Olympia. I've only got a couple more months to go before the Olympia. You were vacillating back and forth, kind of going, I'm confident. I won the Cal. Maybe next year. I need some time to reevaluate. Where are you now? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
We are here. We're going to try to find out. Now, you don't have to commit to anything right now. Because I don't think the contracts have to be signed right now.
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, where are you in your commitment to the Olympia?
I can give a strong 50-50.
Okay,
and
so we're at 5.
We're at 5. And I say that because, of course, there's always factors that go into deciding to go into a prep, right?
Well, before you finish that, we're going to take a commercial break. That way, you guys can tune back in to find out what Patrick's strategy is for this year's Mr. Olympia. All right, we are joined by the California Pro Champion, Patrick Moore. Patrick, do you got a nickname, by the way? Everybody's got a nickname, like Jay, a cut above Cutler, Phil, the Gift, Heat, Dexter, the Blade, Jackson, Sugar Sean Ray. Come on, what do you got?
So my nickname, that came from you. You know that, right?
Oh, what was it?
It was, you said, if we're looking at the future.
Oh,
remember
yes.
That? Yeah, so that.
There you go.
And it's funny.
You like that?
Okay. It was like my sticking point. I'm like,
all right,
I
we'll
can
run
go
with it.
that.
I didn't even know. Who knew?
Yeah. And
we got the copyright.
It popped out and everyone jumped on. And I really like that because I'm thinking like, eventually the sense of physiques are changing so much because there are a lot of aesthetic guys coming up now too.
Absolutely.
And so it's to have that name and no one else was calling themselves that. I was like, that's mine.
We are the future. The future is right here.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
It was funny, Sean, because then what would happen to some of the newer guys now, people would go and comment and say, oh, Patrick Moore's not the future.
Yeah,
this guy.
there
And I'm
you
like,
go.
oh,
yeah,
God.
so it's a perfect name.
Yeah.
You can imagine the backlash that Phil got when they called him the Gift, right? I mean, so in Dorian Yates, we had the Shadow, the Maryland Muscle Machine.
Yeah.
The future seems appropriate for you. But
Yeah.
speaking of the future, we're on a scale of 1 to 10 for the 2021 Olympia coming up October 7th.
Yeah.
And you're sliding right in there at number 5.
Yeah.
50-50 about making the decision.
Yeah, the athlete in me is 100%.
Okay.
And because we want to compete.
Yeah.
You want to get on that stage and you want to know that you can be better than what you just did. Because that's what it's always about for me.
Well, your last appearance, you were 10th?
Yeah.
So there's only one way to go, and that's up, right?
Yeah.
So that's not an option. The first time you showed up, you weren't out in the top 10.
Right. Yeah.
And then your second one, you were 10th.
The first one was the top 10.
Oh, that was it?
That first one was
the
2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was your fan experience.
That was a fan experience.
So
and
this next one coming is where you're arriving.
This is the one that will hit a little bit different because now I have more experience.
Right.
I'm more aware of my body. I'll never forget walking out on that stage. That center square seemed like miles away.
Right.
Once you
and all eyes were on you. You're on the biggest stage in the history of our sport. You know that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about in terms of square feet.
Yeah, it's huge, right? And so you're used to the normal stage, but I remember walking with my head down.
What a long walk that was.
Yeah, it was. And there were so many thoughts going through my head. And I just remember once you get to the square, because at that time no one was hitting a vacuum.
Yeah.
And I could play around with it. I've done it all my life. My mom used to tell me to stop doing it because I would say, look at my ribs, look at my ribs.
Shit, what are you doing to yourself?
Yeah, she's like, stop it.
Yeah.
And so little did I know that would come in handy as a little parlor trick later down the line. And I can still do it.
Very rarely seen on the pro stage.
Yeah, so I remember going to that square and telling myself, you know what, just get there, set your feet, pull the vacuum and hit the front door bicep, smile, and everything else will fall into place.
A lot goes into that long walk. And so at what point did you realize that you're not in the hunt? Because that has to come to you. Obviously, you show up, you're backstage, you see everybody, you have no idea where you stack up.
Yeah.
But then sometimes, somewhere along the contest, you realize it's not my day.
Yeah.
What moment was that for you?
When they did the call outs, and I didn't make the second call out. Now, granted, I didn't make the second call out the first night.
Right.
But I did make it the second
Yeah, because we're talking Friday and Saturday. So on Friday night, you weren't in the first call out.
I wasn't in the first call out.
You weren't in the second call out.
I was somewhere in the third call out mixed with fourth.
But what does that do for your psyche at that moment? Are you just kind of, now I'm resigned, I'm along for the ride, I'm on the team, this is going to be fun? Or are you like, shit, what did I do wrong?
So this is where it comes in, like listening to all the interviews of you guys, and I had Lee Labrada in my corner at that time.
Right.
So Lee told me, your eyes are always on you, right?
Even
So
when you're in the lineup.
You're even in the lineup, if you're up there, they're on you. If you're on the side, they're on you. And he said, I don't care what that call out is. You just, when it's your time to go out there, you pose, you smile, and that's it. That's your only job. I already had that in my mind. Like when I saw the guys that were getting all the hype going into the show, because California Pro, the third tier show, no one's looking at me to do anything, you know, and I'm the new guy. So it's like, oh, okay. So it was really refreshing. I had no expectations.
Right.
So I didn't have that burden of thinking like, wow, I really expected the first or second call out.
Yeah.
So no, falling into that third, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to go and make the best of this. And then whatever happens, happens. So when that happened, I'm just standing, I'm like, okay, well, now I know what this feels like.
Right.
And I know what these guys look like. I know where I need to improve at. So even after the first night, my mind is like, okay, I have to get back to work to see how I can get better.
Right.
So
and these are guys that you were seasoned. I mean, they were expected to be there, right?
Yeah.
Like these aren't guys that you're going, what's he doing out there?
Yeah, they weren't slouches. You know, Brandon Curry, William Bonnack, Dexter Jackson, but they were all.
You got a front row seat.
Yeah, and they were all super cool backstage.
Okay.
So I was easy.
Yeah.
You know, I was more nervous being on stage by myself doing the individual than with them.
Right.
With them, I felt more comfortable because these guys are like my big brothers.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay. And so I didn't let it bother me that much, and so it enabled me to still give a great performance. And I'm glad that I had that mentality because now when I go back and I look at my first time, I enjoyed that. No matter the placing, I actually had a great time. And I think some athletes have those expectations of where they should place. It takes away from the joy of saying like, hey, guy, you remember when you were an amateur and you stepped on this, your only thought was I dreamed to be on that Olympia stage.
Yeah, I think that gets lost when the older you get in the sport because look, You're going to have your peak and you're going to have your on the way down. And on the way down, it's not a fun ride.
Yeah.
Because you've been there before.
Yeah.
But on the way up, like there's something to be said for just the participating. Like this is the actual medal, the Joe Weider medal, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm warming up with the barbell that Dexter just walked away from using backstage. And suddenly you're talking to these guys, they're real people that you only saw from a distance. And there's this brotherhood that you just cannot get unless you get to the Olympia. And like you said, so many people are lifting weights. So few actually get to stand on the stage. And even if you're dead last in that Olympia, there's something about being a part of the pack, right? So how did that night end for you? Because clearly Friday night you realize you're not in the hunt. Saturday you have nothing really to lose. What happens after that? Because you got friends and family in the audience that are there. So was it a party afterwards? Are you celebrating with another athlete that was there?
Yeah, so my family was there. My mom, my dad, my buddy was. I had a lot of friends there. So I had a big group that was there. And of course, Lee, Hunter, Robin, everyone was there. So they had food up in the hotel. Because, of course, I'm dead.
Yeah, you're
like,
right.
I have no energy. But the immediate reaction of getting off stage, the online presence, I think, even though I wasn't active online, I was getting a lot of alerts. And I think I was already, and I was already in good spirits, but that just kind of lifted me up a little bit more. I just remember having gratitude to myself for the work, because it's, oh man, it was tough.
I don't imagine if you go back to this year's Olympia with the California title in your back pocket, that it's going to be a situation where I'm just happy to be here. It's like you're going to be going there with a briefcase, like I'm ready to do business. I gotta improve. What does that improvement look like to you if you get on that stage and you're standing there in that lineup? What are we looking at instead of what we saw last year?
So like I said, this past show was the first time I was able to I felt like I peaked, because hitting those poses when you're full makes it, you just feel different, you know? So for me, trying to repeat a better version of that, and even with that, that was kind of Phil called audibles here and there. There was no plan. He came in and he took a look and he was like, okay, here we go.
This is not what he does. He's not a trainer.
He's not a coach.
He's not a coach.
And he said, basically, we're gonna do this. And it was literally an hour by hour. He was checking, texting, come up to the room, just seeing how it goes. So now it's trying to beat that peak, but this time it's on a 2-day deal. But I did learn a lot from him being there, right? So those are things
Isn't it interesting? Jay Cutler was there for him. Like when Jay saw Phil coming, he's like, yeah, this is good. This guy's got some talent. I'll be a friend. I'll be a mentor. I'll give him some advices.
And he told me a lot of things that I'll use for this prep. That I go. That will make my physique a lot better, because there was stuff I didn't know. And he told me, I'm going to share some stuff with you that I've never shared with anybody, because as I'm on my way out, the one thing I can do is leave something behind. And he said, I know that if I leave you with this information, I know you'll take care of it, and I know you'll use it.
So what's a victory for you then? Being 10th place in the Olympia is one thing, you're top 10 in the world. What is a victory? Being 9th, being better than 8th, making the top 6, beating a certain individual?
Yeah, making that top 5 and not having to do a qualifier again would be.
Okay, so they typically have the top 6, but only the top 5 automatically
qualify.
So trying to break in that top 5, who are we dealing with? Big Ramy? William Bonek? Is William Bonek qualified?
He's qualified.
Because he won the Arnold? Or what?
And he was already top 5, I believe.
Oh, yeah, you're right. So automatic qualifying.
And Hadi, if he makes it over, Hadi Chupin, of course he looks great. Outside of that, we lose Phil.
And who else are we losing?
Who?
Dexter. Dexter was 6 or 7.
Oh, yeah.
So we don't have to worry about him. So, so some guys can sneak in. We know we're missing Rolly Winkler. He fills the big shoes if he comes back, and he's the real deal. But what individual do you have your sights set on that's up there that you think, I could beat him if I get the chance to stand next to him?
Oh, man. If my marker before was Cedric. Because I love Cedric. And we would have banter
Cedric's
back
an
and
X factor, though. I mean, sometimes he's Cedric. And sometimes he's the entertainer.
And
like the Arnold Classic last year, he was the entertainer, right?
And so you like to, but these guys now, it makes it a little tougher, because my physique is so much different than theirs. So usually I would try to gauge it like a guy that's a top 5 that's been there, and how can I line up with them? But these guys that are gonna, the potential top 3, you got Brandon, William, Hadi, Ramy.
Little
top
guys,
4.
man. We're talking guys that are a lot littler.
They're very dense and they're very thick. So I can't say that there's one, but if I could stand next to somebody and say that I'd measure, how far I've come, it would be the closest person to me last year was Kim, but he's not qualified yet.
Yeah,
but I'm guessing he will qualify because he's looking really, really good.
I think for me, he was my improved bodybuilder of the year last year.
Yeah, Kim is crazy, man, crazy. And so if I can try to edge him out,
but we'll see him before he gets to Olympia, which is maybe to your advantage.
Yeah,
because again, he's got to peak.
So
twice.
I'd like to line up against him because we were right there in the second night, right next to each other, and I remember seeing how big he was, and I'm like, damn, if I could, edge out a guy like him with that much mass, then that kind of.
So the thing he did is he dialed it in. Like Big Ramy, we're waiting for him to arrive. He's so big, but then he dialed it in, and he leapfrogged over everybody.
Yeah.
Kim dried out very nicely, and he moved up over some people and took out some names. But that's not something that's guaranteed to happen again and again for those guys.
Yeah.
So you're going to work on which body part specifically?
So for me, everything on the backside.
Okay.
That's the biggest thing I've improved.
We all know the Olympias are one from the back.
I've improved a lot from the front. Okay. And so now it's going to be a lot of hamstring work and just thickness in the back. Right. And that's just time and training and eating and doing all the hard stuff.
Where are you training at? What gym?
So I'm down here. Normally I will train at Species Gym.
Okay.
So, and there's another gym that's Kinetics, but primarily a Species because it's a garage door gym.
Yeah.
That heat, that Texas heat.
Yeah, man.
That's what notorious.
Pull the water out.
Yeah, man. It gets guys in shape. Okay. And so for 2019, for this past California and the 2019 California and this year's, that was my I will drive 40 minutes there and 40 minutes back to train.
So when you're not in the gym, what are you doing?
For the most time, it's just promoting my brand.
You're full-time bodybuilding.
Yeah, I'll have online training. And then, I spend time with my daughter. So I have like a normal life. Yeah, some balance. And so outside of that, I used to train like crazy. I would train clients in person. But now that the online stuff is picking up, I just kind of put my time and focus into those clients.
Okay, so right now we talked about the future.
Yeah.
Which would obviously include someone like a Hunter Labrada, a Nick Walker.
Yeah.
Ian Valier, is that how you say his name? I don't want to get the Canadians come for me when I mispronounce the name. Canadians don't mess around.
That's how I pronounce it, so I think that's the right way.
So it seems like that's the next wave.
Yeah.
Like if we can get Big Ramy and William Bonek to kind of go off into the sunset, and even Brandon Curry for that matter, the next big wave is these new looking physiques. But how nice would it be to get one of those guys, right?
I'm telling you, and that's the thing is like, man, if I could, William's the nicest guy, and he even gave me tips after the Arnold. Yeah. But I know he's obviously going to be up there. So sliding into that top 5 is not going to be easy.
No.
You're going to have to, I just have to bring the best package I can possible, and the chips are going to fall where they're going to fall.
Well, you're 50% committed. When you're 100% committed, let us know right here at Monday Night Muscle. We'll break the news that you were going to be in the Olympia, but right now we got to stay tuned to your social media, which is what?
This is, Patrick T. Moore.
Patrick T. Moore. Follow him on Instagram to find out whether he will or he won't. I have a good sneaky feeling that you will, because there's no way winning a contest, qualifying the Olympia, you're going to sit there next to me and eat popcorn. So we're going to see. I'm assuming I'm going to get the phone call when we announce it.
I'll tell you first, and you told me if I'm not in the game, I'm not in the conversation.
You're not in the game, you're not in the conversation, man. And if you're the future, you got to be in the game.
I got to be in the game.
All right, Patrick. Thank you for joining us here at Monday Night Muscle. That's going to do it for us with the man from Texas, the future. Looking forward to seeing some big, bright things from this guy. And we will be, as a matter of fact, the tickets for the Olympia are on sale right now at MrOlympia.com. But make sure you join us next week where we got more muscle and more madness right here at Monday Night Muscle. Thank you, Patrick Moore. I'm Sean Ray.
Yes, sir.